Continuing with our discussion on classification of research, next I'll be talking about conceptual research versus empirical research. Well, conceptual research is all about abstract ideas. Through conceptual research, a researcher develops new concepts, or at least he reinterprets the existing ideas. Since this research deals with concepts and ideas, that is why it is called conceptual research. On the other hand, we have empirical research that is based on experience or observation. See, if you try to look at the difference between conceptual research and empirical research has conclusions which can be verified by observation or experiment. But this is not true of conceptual research. It is more speculative and just the product of a person's own imagination and thinking. And then we have applied research versus fundamental research. Applied research is a research that is conducted to find a solution for practical problems happening in a society or an industrial or business organization. So applied research, the title itself means that this research aims at finding some solution. It has certain practical benefit, use. So most of the time applied research has commercial or educational objectives. We either want to find a solution in business, or we want to introduce a strategy, a new methodology for some problems that students might be facing or which might be found in our education system itself. And the goal is to improve the human condition. For instance, sometimes the research is conducted to improve agricultural crop production. So in agricultural departments, the researchers try to find out the solutions to different problems that farmers face in their day-to-day life, or they try to treat or cure a specific disease. So experimentations are taking place on regular basis. And then we have to improve the energy efficiency of homes, offices, or modes of transportation. So all these types of researches with these objectives are applied research, because they are aimed to find a solution for a certain problems that is being experienced by society, and a solution is required. So marketing research or evaluation research which seeks out a solution for some practical problem is called applied research. On the other hand, we have fundamental research. It is also called basic or pure research. Now, this fundamental research is a research that is curiosity driven. It simply aims to satisfy our curiosity to know about things. So through conducting this type of research, the researcher actually expands human knowledge. He brings in more ideas, and these ideas do not have a practical, immediate, commercial or industrial use. That is why it is called pure research. It is research for the sake of knowledge. So when the researcher conducts fundamental research, he develops principles, ideas and concepts that may not be used in practice as they are. So in their immediate form, they cannot be used practically. The second thing that I'm going to discuss is what are the aims of fundamental research. So aims of fundamental research are addition to the already existing organized body of knowledge. So there are already ideas on a certain topic, and a person conducting fundamental research tries to add more ideas, to bring in ideas that help us understand life or any of it, if its aspects better. So his ideas actually contribute to our widening of perception. Now basic research, sometimes it is quite puzzling for students. They think that it is probably useless if it does not have a practical use. But what you need to understand is that fundamental research only does not have immediate use, because finally, ultimately, a lot of basic research becomes the foundation for applied science, for applied, for practical use. So it does not have a practical use currently, but afterwards it is used practically for some human benefit. I'll give you a few examples. For instance, look at the first example. The universe is not contracting, it is expanding. See, a scientific finding. And this finding, the research that concluded and introduced this idea, developed this idea, does not have any obvious immediate commercial value. But afterwards, after some time, these apparently ideas without any immediate use become very useful. For instance, let's look at another example. Mercury, if given heat, can expand. Now it's again a conclusion coming from fundamental research, but afterwards this finding has been used practically. For instance, now we have a tool in medical field, thermometer, and the same finding is applied to this tool, and now when thermometer is used, actually the mercury within it is given heat of human body, and this heat makes it expand, and through this instrument the physician measures the body temperature of the patient. So this conclusion drawn from basic research has been put to use now. Now I'm giving you a few examples to understand fundamental research better and its nature. For instance, look at these questions. How did the universe begin? What are protons, neutrons and electrons composed of? How do slime molds reproduce? What is the specific genetic code of the fruit fly? All these questions are questions from fundamental research. They do not have any practical immediate use. But you cannot say that all these attempts to find out answers to these questions are fruitless. They basically satisfy our curiosity. We want to know about the universe, about different aspects of life. Although our conclusions from this research might not have immediate use. But this research adds to human knowledge. So this addition to human knowledge is in itself a great achievement, because life does not always need solutions. Sometimes you need these ideas to satisfy your mind, to feel at home with the universe and its different aspects. So through this scientific knowledge, man has actually come to understand the mysteries of the universe. So this ability to explain the unknown, the mysterious, the puzzling has a mental satisfaction. So simply speaking, applied research is aimed to find a solution for a problem. On the other hand, fundamental research does not want to offer a solution to the problem. It actually simply adds to human knowledge. And then we have some other types of research. Let's just go through them quickly. And one-time research, longitudinal research, historical research, all these categories, all these types are actually determined by these few factors: objectives of research, the time that is spent in the research, or the environment of research. So let's get started with the first one, one-time research. So one-time research means a research that is confined to a single time period. And then we have longitudinal research, the research that is carried on over several time periods. So these two are actually in opposition to each other. So one-time research is confined to a single time period, that the research is conducted once and that's it. On the other hand, longitudinal research is research carried on several time periods. So in research, sometimes the researcher wants to measure any differences by conducting research after some time. For instance, he interviewed people at the beginning of January 2019 and developed a summary of their ideas. Now after 6 months, he interviews the same people again and wants to find out if their opinions have changed, and then obviously he'll try to analyze what factors have actually contributed to this change. So this would be called longitudinal research. And then we have historical research. Historical research which utilizes historical sources like documents, remains, to study events or ideas of the past, including the philosophy of people and groups at any remote point of time. So remote here refers to distant point of time. So this is what we this is the kind of research that is going on in anthropology, study of culture, that you study the remains of the past long dead civilizations and try to understand their outlook on life, their ideas, and many things about their civilization, about their philosophy of life. In the end, we have the most important discussion on quantitative research versus qualitative research, and then we'll conclude this with a brief discussion of mixed methods research. So quantitative research is the collection and analysis of numerical data to describe, explain, predict or control your phenomena of interest, things which you are studying. So what differentiates quantitative research from qualitative is the difference of the data that is being studied and the results, the way they are being reported. So in quantitative research, the data is numerical, based on numbers and quantity, and the results are also reported in numerical form in terms of percentages or frequency, quantity, number. So this is based on the measurement of quantity or amount. So this research leads to results which are typically summarized numerically in the form of numbers. On the other hand, we have qualitative research. Now qualitative research is the collection, analysis and interpretation of comprehensive narrative and visual data. So the data that is being collected, analyzed and interpreted in qualitative research is not numerical, and it is done to gain insights into a particular phenomenon of interest, things which the researcher wants to analyze and understand. So this research is actually it actually deals with qualitative phenomena, things which are related to quality or kind. For instance, opinions, feelings, values, interpretations and responses of the participants or their behavioral patterns. So all these things cannot be quantified, they cannot be explained in numbers. So that is why we use narrative descriptive form to talk about all these things. So basically, qualitative research is done to better understand variables. So again, let me remind you, variables means different aspects of research which are changeable. For instance, the age of your participants, their gender, their background, their education. So all these are variables that are difficult to quantify. See, I already explained that opinions, feelings, values cannot be quantified. People's religious beliefs or political opinions. So instead, we use narrative descriptive form of data to talk about these things: attitudes, religious beliefs, political opinions, etc., etc. So qualitative research can be used to draw a picture about a specific population. Another technical difference between qualitative and quantitative research is the presence of hypothesis or absence thereof. First of all, let me explain what hypothesis is. A hypothesis is a tentative proposition, a statement, which is subject to verification through subsequent investigation. So, hypothesis is your undeveloped raw idea that needs evidence. So, what the researcher actually does is he makes an argument, offers an idea, and then provides evidence by reading, collecting, and analyzing the data related to it, and ultimately concludes. So, in the beginning, his idea is merely hunch, a guess that is not a fully developed idea. So, this is what hypothesis is. In the beginning of your research, you actually predict something and you are not sure about whether your reading will support it or refute it. So, you can only confirm its correctness or reject it when you collect data, study and analyze it. So, in quantitative research, we test a specific hypothesis. We already have a hypothesis and we try to test it through our reading in quantitative research. On the other hand, in qualitative research, we do not have a hypothesis already available. Rather, you need to read and read and read in order to develop an idea and then somehow provide evidence for it. Similarly, the context in both these researches is different. In quantitative research, the context is controlled because in quantitative research we use questionnaires. So, the people who are answering these questions have a very limited option. They have to either say yes or no, or 25%, 50%, 75% or 100%. How far do they agree with the statement that is given by the researcher? So, their opinion is limited. They can only respond according to the options which are provided by the researcher. They cannot move beyond these limitations, these restrictions. So, their context is confined, it is controlled by the researcher. On the other hand, in qualitative research, we have a free context. The context is naturalistic. We have interviews and observations in which the participant, the person who is being interviewed or whose observations we are gaining, can talk about any ideas coming to his mind. So, he can freely express his ideas and opinions. He has no limitations, no restrictions. So, in simple words, in quantitative research, we have a hypothesis that is being tested through collection, analysis and interpretation of data. On the other hand, in qualitative research, we do not have a ready-made hypothesis. And similarly, in quantitative research, the context is controlled by the researcher. And in qualitative research, the context is open, it is free. That is why it is said that the setting, the context of qualitative research is naturalistic. There are no limitations, no restrictions. And finally, the last point of this discussion with which we are going to conclude it is mixed methods research. So, mixed methods research simply means the researcher combines both qualitative and quantitative data in his research. So, it is a combination of narrative and numerical data. He talks about percentages, numbers, graphs, and at the same time he offers narrative data, descriptive data, in which he talks about his own findings. Now, mixed methods research must be justified in one way or another. I mean, whether you choose to go for quantitative research, qualitative research, or even mixed methods research, you must have a sound reasoning behind it. Otherwise, your choice will be questioned and might be rejected by the examiner. So while you are conducting your research, you have to be very alert about the choices you are making as a researcher. These choices must be defended and justified by the researcher. So similarly, mixed methods research is allowed and encouraged in research, but it must have a rationale behind it. It must have a strong, convincing reason that supports your choice of choosing narrative and numerical data for your research. And the criterion is that your research problem requires the use of narrative and numerical data. I mean, you have chosen such an issue which cannot be explained to great satisfaction if you rely on either of these two forms of data, narrative or numerical. So for clarity and for satisfaction of your readers, you talk about both of these data. You actually bring in both of these forms to solidify your findings. So you must consider the nature and objectives of your research while making this choice. If your research problems, research questions, and the nature and objectives of your research persuades you to choose mixed methods research, you are allowed to do that. It should not be an arbitrary choice, just your impulsive desire to go for mixed methods research. You must have a logical and concrete reason behind it. So actually, mixed methods research is being conducted and encouraged on a large scale these days. Earlier, there was a great debate going on which approach was better, quantitative or qualitative. But now the researchers have opened themselves up for the use of mixed methods research. And the basic idea behind combining both of these forms of data is that quantitative or qualitative research, both of them have their own limitations and weaknesses. So if we combine both, we'll be able to overcome their limitations and weaknesses and strengthen our arguments. So by combining both of these forms of data, you actually strengthen your arguments, your ideas. You do not only offer narrative data, but you also bring in numerical data. You also give numbers, percentages and graphs to further reinforce the ideas that you have described. So the combination of these two actually lets the reader and the examiner understand the solidity and strength of your ideas better. So that's it for today. Thank you very much, and I hope you are going to work really hard on your studies and I'll see you in the next class. Till then, Allah Hafiz.